Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sounds and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thank you so much for checking us out as always. You know the drill. If you dig in what you see, if you like hearing from your favorite artists, hit that subscribe button. We put out 3 brand new interviews every single week. And one of my all-time favorite artists I can definitely say is Lake Street Dive. I've got Rachael here. Congratulations. You are back with a brand new record. That's fantastic with this album called Obviously. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah. Not withstanding this weird time that we're living in, but yeah, I'm doing okay. Thank you.
Well, if you can complete a record and actually get it out into the world, that's enough of a feat these days in itself. So that's just congratulations there, I suppose.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
It is another great record. We always love what you guys do. This one, there's some new layers, I guess, to it. I'll just start with the broad questions too, because maybe it's a press release or something, I don't know, but you all do talk about challenging yourselves, doing stuff that you've never done before. What does that mean this time around?
Well, we worked with a new producer, so that's always a new venture and pushing yourselves in a different direction, because the producer ostensibly during the process of a record becomes like another member of the band. They're making a lot of big choices. So we had a lot of songs written for this album, a lot of potential songs, because we did much more collaborating than we've ever done in the past. We've slowly been writing songs with one another, and this album has the most collaborating, and we did a lot of it while we were on tour, so there was a lot more real time sort of in the room with each other, passing sort of demos back and forth and discussing songs. So we ended up with 30 songs, and we needed help with which ones to record, and that was a big part of where Mike Elizando, the producer, kind of came in early in the process, and I think basically every song that he chose we recorded, which was very helpful because we were a little lost.
Yeah, I know Mike, he's a dynamic producer as far as the artists he's worked with, but he is a pop producer at the end of the day. I mean, he survives in the pop world. It's not that you all are in a pop band in a lot of ways, and I'm using that term in that big broad way and everything, but is it something different what he brings from that area of the industry?
Definitely, yeah. We chose Mike mostly because we were so into the hip hop music that he has produced and engineered. And as far as like the sonic palette of music these days, we're most inspired by hip hop. So Mike felt like such a great choice because he's completely well versed in that whole world and has worked on it a lot. He's also an upright jazz bass player. And he also loves to play folk music. I met him while I was singing on the NPR radio show Live from Here. So I knew that he was very versatile musically, and he also produced one of my favorite albums of all time, this Fiona Apple record. So I just knew that he was going to be able to bring a lot of different sensibilities, whether it was just like, hey, can you create a drum track that kind of makes us feel like we're a hip hop band, but also, sort of hearing different things in songs. Yeah. So it was really, really awesome.
So how do you apply that to what you're doing, just specifically on the lead vocalist part then? Because as you're talking about hip hop, you're not rapping on the record exactly. I mean, there is some interesting rhythms happening. I'll even bring up the first single with Making Do. I mean, tackling the subjects that you're tackling and making them poetic. Is that sort of what you're getting from hip hop as you're talking about?
I think more it's sonically, like if we were getting very specific, just the way the drums sound, the fact that it's a pretty dry sound overall. That's kind of what we were going for sonically, and then sort of applying that aesthetic to our songs, which I wouldn't say we're particularly writing in any specific style, especially if you had heard all these demos, you wouldn't know what direction any of it was really going to go in. Nothing was super obvious, ironically. But, that's what a producer does. They sort of are like the person who like puts all the finishing touches and makes everything kind of make sense together.
So writing them with each other, and I was reading a little bit about that, I think on Twitter too, specifically writing in pairs as you've done. I mean, I know with any, especially band, I guess, after so many years, you're going to be looking for new ways to kind of come at the same thing, a song or whatever. But when you're still writing in pairs with the same people that you've been with for the past decade, are there some expectations you get when you pair off with a specific member?
Sure, yeah, definitely. I mean, we're all keenly aware of each other's specific strengths. For example, Mike Olson was writing this song, I Know That You Know That I Know. I can't never remember the name of this song. And there's just a lot of very cute, funny rhyming couplets. And so he knows that Aki spends all of his time sort of writing poetry all day. He loves words. He's a very punny individual. So he turned to Aki and he was like, I know that you can give me like 25 more couplets for this song. And he did. He obliged. So there's things like that. I think Nobody's Stopping You Now, which I wrote with Bridget. I'm not surprised that like she heard that song and she was like, I want to take on completing that song for you, because I think that she has a certain talent in like finding a hook of a song when you yourself don't know what the hook is. So yeah, there's certain things like that where we kind of know what each other is good at. But it really changes, it's the direction of the writing. So whoever starts the song to whoever finish the songs, those have different strengths. And that's kind of like where you get these sort of endless combinations of possibilities.
Right. It's interesting with No One's Stopping You Now and Making Do, because I noticed that was sort of, as far as writing tricks go, taking on an opposite thing. Making Do has you looking towards a generation in the future, while No One's Stopping You Now has you talking to yourself in the past.
Yeah.
And as a writer, what goes into that part of it? Because there's got to be a certain extra layer of imagination, I would expect.
Yeah, I think for me, I work well with writing prompts. So I don't I don't criticize myself too early in the process. So like, for instance, for Nobody's Stopping You Now, I had just decided that I wanted to start reading through all my old journals from when I was 12, 13, 14. There are a lot of them. And sort of start writing from that perspective or about that person who I was. And it was more of an exercise than anything, just for the sake of it. No expectation of ever recording the song or the songs being for Lake Street Dive. And I do really well with exercises like that.
Yeah, I can't read the stuff that I wrote when I was 13 or 14. I have to push it back.
I mean, it's hysterical. I mean, I love to read it because like there's so many detailed things that were happening to me at the time, and I have like almost no memory of them. Like I was like, I don't know who this boy is. I don't know why I was so in love with him. I literally cannot remember who he is. So why are there chapters and chapters of him? But that's the nature of time and memory.
That's interesting. And kind of flipping that back to what we were talking about with Making Do, because here is something, and this leads into what you all do outside of the band as well, as far as activism or aligning with activist companies wasn't the right word, but like Oxfam and places like that. But with Making Do in a song like that, I know it does become sort of a time capsule of sorts. You're planting something for later. And with those type of songs, I mean, first of all, do they get to say something? Because you didn't write these, since January 20th, since Biden became president. Do they get to say something different now in a Biden presidency than they would have under Trump?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's so many examples of great songs over the years. You listen back to them, you listen to songs from the 60s and 70s, and you're like, wow, this really applies to right now. And I don't really think, specifically with Making Do, the issue of taking care of our planet is one that's going to, we're not going to really tire of that issue. It's not going to go away. I think we have decades and decades for that anxiety that was being felt acutely in order to write that song. I don't think that's really going to go away for a long time. And similarly, there's songs that allude to specific people or things. Maybe like Hush Money has kind of an allusion to something specific, but there's always going to be people in power that are taking advantage of people that are not in power. So I think these subjects, sadly, they're timeless.
Right. Well, another one is, being a woman. I mean, that arrives in a different world than even just 5 or 10 years ago, as far as what the conversations are now.
Yeah.
Does it feel like that would have been a different song had you, I mean, could you have written this song, 5 or 10 years ago? Would it have been different?
You could have written it. It's cool the way the way the conversation changes based on sort of collective understanding of these types of issues. I remember as soon as I heard that song, not as soon as I heard it, but around the time, I read an article in the New York Times that went through very specifically the division of labor, statistically speaking, from the 1950s to the present between men and women, and specifically the division of unpaid labor, sort of like the housework and taking care of the family and things like that. And it's still a pretty big percentage. I'm getting very specific, but the song is the thesis of the song is being a woman is a full-time job. And we're getting at this idea that it's still more so a full-time job than a man's. And it was really cool to see information, to see statistics, and be like, oh yeah, this is true. You can just see it in the numbers. They've been studying it. And it's, gradually been becoming more equal since the 50s, but it's still pretty unequal. And I don't know, that really pleased me. So yeah, you could have written that song 40 years ago. It would have been more tongue in cheek. And today it's a little bit more serious because it's like, why are we still dealing with this?
Yeah. I'll bring that point back to the songwriting side of things too. Then,
sorry, I lost you.
That's okay. We still here?
Oh, sorry. You know what? My cat hit the volume. I'm keep pushing my cat away from the screen.
All right. I was going to say, bringing that back to the songwriting side of things, as I was mentioning with Making Do in this one, does it become a challenge of how to say that poetically? Because it's done very well. You can still sing along to these, and I know that's probably an important aspect to it too.
Yeah, I think it's a real challenge. In the case of Being a Woman, that song is written by Bridget, and I know that she really, really labored over those lyrics and to ensure that they were very, very thoughtful. And even throughout the process, she questioned them. She's like, is this coming across the way that I wanted to come across? And we were like, yes, absolutely. This is a great song. But, it's a very scary thing to say something like that in a song, even though it's very true. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the hard truth is the thing that you're like, maybe I shouldn't say that. So I applaud Mike Calabrese. He wrote Making Do, and Bridget for putting those messages into songs. And it is cool when you can put a message into a 3-minute song that you can still sort of bop your head to, because the idea is that you can listen to it over and over again. It won't tire you, but the message will start to have more meaning.
Right. You guys do a great job of that. I
Thanks.
mean, you really do, especially on this record here. And again, I know that goes outside of the band too. I was reading about the virtual lessons for actual change. I thought this was a great thing to be a part of. Could you talk about that for a second? What exactly that is?
Yeah, it's a collective of musicians, and we are offering donation-based music lessons, and all the proceeds go to racial justice organizations. So, our idea was to want to be a part of the racial justice movement, to support it in some way, and also to sort of invest and believe in the possibility of collective effort. So I'm putting in an hour a week total, and it's a similar amount of time for all of these musicians. And, at this point, we're raising upwards of $5,000 a month for these organizations, and we're hoping to double that. So anyone listening out there, if you want to book a music lesson, go to Virtual Lessons for Actual Change. Yeah, so I think this idea of that we can all put in small amounts of work for big collective effort is something that really excites us, and we're very much invested in supporting racial justice.
Yeah, this is what I love from my favorite artists anyway. It is the different levels, participation that I as a fan can kind of grab onto, if I want to or not. For this, I absolutely would, something like that. It's a weird seg because this is a bit more on the superficial side of things here, but talking about the entire world of Lake Street Dive, you have what we're talking about here, and you also have this amazing image that you all project. I say it in the fashion sense, you know, just in the photos that you go out there. I will say it's in an old school way of doing things that a lot of bands don't take as much attention to.
Thank
Like
you.
you all create this world. How much thought goes into that when you go into a record as of what world you're visually creating?
So much thought. I mean, some of it's very, very last minute, and we're like, oh gosh, what are we gonna do? But I personally think about that stuff a lot. You know, whether it's the clothes we're wearing, the background, the photo we choose, all of those things are really. I mean, they're a fun part of the job, so I take them very seriously.
Do you actually know what, like I say the world, a lot of artists use that kind of phrase there when they're talking about this, but do you know what you're making this time around, like what the visual representation is? Is there a name to put on it?
No, not really. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'd have to show you my Pinterest board, I guess. But yeah, I was like, no, I don't really know.
It's all right. Again, it's fun to watch. Like I said, it kind of makes the whole thing come together. Rachel, I love what you guys do. Congratulations again on obviously such a strong record, and it's so great having you all back once again. Thank you for taking the time to talk about it too.
Thank you so much.